68% of male 18 to 34-year-old churchgoers say they feel close to people in their local area. 68% of 18 to 34-year-old men say that they feel close to people in their community, compared to 27% of non-churchgoers their age. So if you don't go to church, you're alone. If you go to church, almost 70% are like, yeah, I feel connected. In other words, a sense of closeness to other people doubles when a young adult attends and gets involved in a local church. Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast. It's Carey here, and I hope our time together today helps you thrive in life and leadership. Hey, wherever you're listening or watching, we're so glad to have you. We are doing an update today. It's something I did this about 5 years ago. Every year I release church trends, and we do this in January. I've done it for almost a decade, where I spend the year just kind of looking around, noticing what I can find, and then I identify anywhere between 5 and maybe 8 or 9 church trends that leaders should pay attention to for the year. So we released ours in January, as we do every year, but this year, 2025, has been a year of incredible change. And so what I'm doing today in the podcast on YouTube is I'm updating the church trends, because rarely have I seen things change this quickly. And the good news is it's positive. It's really, really positive. So that's what we're going to dive into. So if you remember my 2025 church trends report, all kinds of new data showing that Gen Z church attendance has actually quadrupled in the last 6 years and is on this massive upswing. Young men are leading the charge. In the UK, 21% of Gen Z men are attending church. It's like, what? So we've seen a lot of anecdotes, and in January we had a lot of anecdotes, but now we've got numbers, actual numbers. I'm going to share them with you. I'm going to update it. I'm also going to review all 5 church trends. So, I realize lots of you have read them, watched them, heard about them, but you probably haven't committed them to memory. So we'll go through them. And then the other one I want to update. The first one is Gen Z, is in revival and retreat at the same time. The second one I really want to drill down on in the podcast today is on AI. There was a mental health crisis trend that I identified. And there's a shift in that too that I think is really interesting and has long-term implications for church leaders. So the theme today, as much as in January I said, Gen Z is in revival and retreat, it looks like revival is winning. And there's all kinds of data to back that up. Now, real quick, before we dive into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join the conversation around it in my Art of Leadership Academy. You've been part of a podcast audience for years, a lot of you. Some of you are brand new, and welcome. But what if you could actually become part of a community where we discuss these things? I mean, we try to bring you things of substance every time we launch an episode. And yeah, you can comment on social or you can comment on YouTube. But what if you're with a group of like-minded church leaders and you could go deeper? And I'm going to be in that conversation. That's what's happening in my Art of Leadership Academy. You can get the show notes there. And if you create a free account, you'll be able to join the conversation. So just visit theartofleadershipacademy.com or click the link in the description of this episode to create a free account. So we're going to dive into the updated trends in just a moment. But first, a word from our carefully curated partners, and then we'll dive right in. Today's episode is brought to you by Gloo. Well, summer's in full swing, and let's be honest, keeping your church community connected during the slower months, that can be hard. That's why I want to tell you about a simple way to stay in touch with all of your people and be intentional. It's messaging through Gloo Plus. With Gloo Plus, you can create unlimited custom groups, parents, volunteers, say small group leaders. I mean, you name it. You can be creative and then send tailored texts that really hit home. It's like putting your communication strategy on autopilot, except it's custom and you're doing it in the most personable way possible. So here's the kicker. Gloo Plus gives you 15,000 texting credits every month. Yep, every month. So you can show up consistently without breaking the bank. If meaningful connection matters to you, and I know it does, Gloo Plus is your next best step. So head on over to gloo.com/plus. That's gloo.com/plus and start leading with clarity today. Okay, so let's talk church trends. And let's start with a quick recap of the original 2025 church trends before we update them. So the first trend I had, and this is one I'm going to double click on today, is Gen Z is in revival and retreat at the same time. And what we had in January was conflicting data. We had a lot of anecdotal stories of revivals, college campuses, baptisms, things breaking out in churches. But the overall demographics were that Gen Z is still, as they got older, on retreat out of the church. Well, brand new data suggests that's changed. I'm going to share that data with you in a minute. We are now trending toward revival, which is awesome. Trend number 2, by the way, just by way of reminder, is for 2025, evangelism is on life support. Now, that might be changing too, especially among Gen Z. But it was a stat I read from Barna fairly recently that said that 1% of pastors believe that their church was very effective at reaching unchurched people, and not all church growth is equal. A lot of it is transfer growth. So I don't think we're out of the woods on that. And, with this new revival among Gen Z, hopefully, a rising tide lifts all boats, but churches have got to take evangelism more seriously. Trend number 3, church closures appear to be outpacing church plants 3-1. No new data here, but that needs to change. We need more church planters. Anyone listening, maybe go plant a church. That would be great. We'd love to see that one change. 4th trend is this, the rise of the non-derivative church. For years, we had kind of a cookie cutter approach to church. It's like, I saw this church do it. I'm going to do it, 3 songs and a message. I'm seeing a lot more authenticity, less duplication, a lot more originality. That's really cool. Got to keep that going. Not going to update that trend. I think that one stands. But the 5th one, the mental health crisis is about to get worse. I am going to update that one. I think it's going to get a little bit worse than I thought it was even in January. I've got new data I want to share on how people are using AI. But I've also got a plan for you and your church, how you can do something about it. So stay tuned. So the real-time updates are coming on trends 1 and 5, revival and retreat, and mental health. These are the things that are changing in real time. So if you're ready, let's dive in, and we will start with trend number 1. I'm going to rename trend number 1 as the Gen Z revival is real. Okay, if you listen to my podcast episode series on this in January, you'll remember maybe that I talked to JP Pucluta and Jenny Allen, and I'm like, yeah, but the data says overall, and Jenny's like, yeah, but the revival's real. You know what? Jenny's right. She's right. Okay, so is JP. So there's a news study, a major news study out of England called the Quiet Revival Report, and I see England as a bit of a canary in a coal mine. I've been there, traveled there over the years. And, they became post-Christian long before America did, but they're starting to really see revival there. And they just released, the Bible Society of England and Wales released a report outlining a study of 13,000 people. Okay, that's a lot of people. Most comprehensive data we've seen. So, does that apply directly to America? No, but it quantifies some of the trends that you're seeing anecdotally in America. And I want to go into some of the data. So here we go. From that UK report, church attendance in England and Wales has grown from 8% to 12% of the population in just 6 years. So if you went to, a lot of British churches 10 years ago, you would have seen little old ladies and old gentlemen sitting there waiting for their church to die, 20 or 30 people. So actually, that's 56% growth from 2018 to 2024. That means that, church attendance has grown in England from 3.7 million to 5.8 million adults in just a few years. Now, what's interesting about that, it's not all boomers and Gen Xers who are returning to church. The data is showing that church attenders are now younger, and you probably heard this if you listen to this podcast carefully, they're male. Young men are leading the surge in church attendance. So 21% of young adult males in the UK now attend church. That is up from just 4% in 2018. You hear that? That's like a quintupling of young adult male attendance in the UK in just 6 years. Young women, 12% of them now attend church. That's up from 3%. But young men attending church is outpacing young women attending church. And the 18 to 24-year-olds, they've gone from 4% attending church to 16%. That's quadrupled. I know that's a lot of numbers, but here's the trend. It's big, okay? And I remember if a lot of you longtime listeners were listening to my Tim Keller interviews, in my first one with Tim in New York City a few years ago, Tim said when he got to Manhattan, there was like 1% of the population was attending church. When he finished up his ministry, it was closer to 10%. And what that means is, If you're in an office of 100 people back in 1989 when the Kellers planted Redeemer, one person in your office, probably you, went to church. Nobody else did. By the time Redeemer finished, and it wasn't just Redeemer, it was a lot of other churches that came to New York, you might have 10 people in that office of 100 who started attending church. And so you weren't alone. And that's what's happening in the UK. So with Gen Z, you get a crowd of 100, 16 to 20 of those 100 people are going to be going to church now. So what you're seeing in UK churches is grandmothers and grandkids and great-grandkids kind of skipped a couple generations. Now, what's happening in the US? Well, we don't have exactly that kind of data in the US, but we do have new Barna data, which was really surprising. I've talked about those with David Kinnaman on this podcast in earlier episodes. And David was shocked by this. I've worked with David for years, the CEO of the Barna Group. Adults who have made a commitment to Jesus Christ that is still active in their life today rose 12 percentage points in 3 years. So between 2021 and 2024, it went from 54% of people who said, yeah, Jesus is still important to me, to 66% of adults. There's been a surge, and David called it a reversal of a historic decline. So Gen Z and millennials are also doubling down on church attendance. They went from attending less than once a month 5 years ago to 1.6 times a month in 2025. I know the cynics are probably going, yeah, okay, well, they're still not going every week. Yeah, but that's a significant surge, and it's being led by millennials and Gen Z, which is just super cool. Now, more data. Okay, I'm not going to try to bury your head in data, but this is just really interesting trends to watch, and this is why I'm kind of saying the revival is real. In that same UK Quiet Revival report, it shows that Bible reading has doubled since 2018. So 60% of churchgoers in the UK now read their Bible weekly. That's up from 54%. Young churchgoers are reading their Bible more than older churchgoers. So it's not like grandma and grandpa that are reading the Bible. Maybe some of them are. It's the kids and, young adults. In the US, Bible sales have been on the rise for a while. In 2019, Americans bought 9.7 million Bibles. In 2024, that number jumped to over 14 million. So again, significant surges. And who's driving it? According to the Wall Street Journal, Gen Z, younger Americans. Did you know that there's over 8 million posts on TikTok about the Bible, a slew of videos about Bibles to buy, all being generated by the next generation? And sales are not only on the rise at Christian stores, but at mainstream retailers like Amazon. So everybody's paying attention to this. So why is this happening? Well, first of all, there's a cultural shift. I really believe young adults are looking for an alternative to the culture, not an echo of it. They've seen what the culture is doing. They see how empty it is. They know how lonely they feel, and they're looking for something different. And if you've got a church that is offering something that is not just a cookie cutter carbon copy of the culture, if you're leading them to authentic Christianity, I think they're interested and they're hungry and they're ready to go there. And they're showing up hungry, ready, and let's go deep. So I think that's what's happening. The other thing is the mental health crisis, has driven a search for meaning. There is a community hunger post-COVID, right? People are looking for authenticity over performance. And Christianity is no longer embarrassing. It's kind of like, no, we've tried everything else. We've tried OnlyFans. We've tried all this stuff. We tried the club scene. We tried dating. Hey, we're looking for something real, right? So Christianity is the alternative, of course. It's always been. But I think this next generation is just so hungry for it, they're ready to embrace it. So hey, we've got, by the way, if you're interested in drilling down on this, not only have I got this episode, but in August, we're doing a whole revival podcast series. I want to go deep on this. I'm going to be interviewing Nicky Gumbel and other UK church leaders. JP Pokluda is coming back. We're going to talk about what he's seeing at college campuses and at his church. John Tyson is going to give us a history of revival, filming that in New York City. Andy Wood and Luke Lefevre. Zach Meerkrabs, who preached the sermon that kicked off the Asbury outpouring, is going to be joining us. Plus, we have a lot more in that revival series. So just a little teaser that there's more coming up on this. Hey, we just report on what's going on here, and it is really great to get good news. So I want to equip you with everything to put a little bit of wind behind your sails and help you navigate your ministry. So that's why we're doing it. Now, what does this mean? All of this in terms of Gen Z revival means that Gen Z is now the second most likely age group in the UK to attend church after those who are 65 plus. It means that probably the inevitable decline of the church in England appears to be a dead story. It means that Christianity is becoming a very palpable alternative to a younger generation. I mean, you've probably even seen on social, Joe Rogan is now apparently attending church, even in America. That's amazing. Okay. The retreat part, yeah, it's still happening, but I think revival is surging, or you might even say outtrending it. So then the question becomes, well, what do you do? Well, first, I would pray. I mean, this is fundamentally a spiritual endeavor, right? We're not programming our way into this. People are spiritually hungry. And if churches have a real solution, which we do if you tap into the real gospel, you're going to be able to answer that hunger with, the life that abounds. So ask God about it. Just pray about it. Get your team praying about it. God, how do we get in on what you're doing? Be very open and sensitive to the leading of the Holy Spirit. And I don't just mean on Sunday. I mean on Sunday. But I also mean, be very sensitive in your own life. God, who are you leading me to? I've been praying that prayer myself. And you end up in conversations with neighbors that you haven't seen in a little while. You end up in conversations with store clerks. Really be open to the sensitivity and leading of the Holy Spirit. And then stop nickel and diming young adult ministry. Now, you don't have to have a young adult ministry. Your young adult ministry could be Sunday morning. That's great. But don't nickel and dime it. Actually realize this is a real thing. And then another thing I would suggest is mentor young adults personally. If you're over 40, you can do that and get your whole church involved. It's grandparents and parents have a role here too. It seems that Gen Z is really open to intergenerational mentoring. And the good news is the window is wide open. When the Spirit of God is moving, the church needs to get engaged and get on board. So this is something you can discuss with your team, but the data is starting to get overwhelming that the revival is real. So that's my first update. Second update is the mental health connection. Okay. I'm not going to spend as much time on it, but I want you to really pay attention to this. And I'm going to be talking a lot about this over the next few years. I feel like when I talk about this, nobody's listening. So maybe you're going to shut off the podcast now, but I hope you'll listen. I'm really concerned about this. And I think there's something else happening right now that's going to make the spiritual hunger even greater in the next few years. So the big finding here from my original 2025 Church Trends report was that there was an age divide between church leaders who were over 45 and under 45 when it came to mental health. So while 21% of pastors over the age of 45 say they're flourishing, only 7% of church leaders under the age of 45 say they're flourishing. So in the report originally, back in January, I also flagged the rise of AI companions as something the church needs to be tracking. So, I'm really concerned about this. When only 7% of under 45 church leaders say they're doing well, that's not cool. That's not cool, okay? But what's going to make that better or worse? Well, you probably followed the work of Jonathan Haidt. He's had a huge, huge impact on culture, talking about the impact of social media on mental health. And, there's real changes happening. Well, if you think that social media had a negative impact on mental health, wait until AI companionship takes over culture. All right. So in mid-2025, I found this stat that makes me very alarmed. So think about how people use generative AI, right? ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, etc. So according to the Harvard Business Review, in 2024, the number one reason people went to ChatGPT was for ideation. Ideas. Hey, I need some ideas on, a bake sale I'm doing or a sermon I'm doing. You know what it became in 2025? Therapy and companionship. New number one use. Number one reason, hands down, people use AI like ChatGPT, Claude, etc. Companionship and therapy. They're building relationships with bots that aren't real. Now that has got huge implications. First of all, yeah, people need therapy. They need access to therapy. You can get great advice from ChatGPT, but they're also creating avatars and people like bots that have personalities. A lot of that is sexualized as well. So your sexual partner is now a bot. Your best friend might be a bot. Your therapist might be a bot. And of course, those algorithms, which are driven for profit, are there to keep you hooked and keep you engaged in the same way that social media is. So the number one use case for AI in 2025 is companionship and therapy. So what does this mean? Well, here's my prediction. That is going to worsen the mental health crisis, not help it. Now, look, I know people need advice, right? But the thing about human relationships is they're uneven. You go to a therapist, maybe your therapist is having a bad day. Maybe your therapist pushes back. The algorithm is not going to counsel you like a real person or a pastor or a therapist is going to counsel you. I've been married for 35 years now, which is awesome, but we've had our ups and downs. And my wife is amazing, but she's not perfect. I am definitely not a perfect husband. But, if my wife was to create an AI companion, which you can do, and he always says the right thing, always knows exactly what she's thinking, she's going to start relying on the AI companion more than she relies on me. Or if I do the same thing, it could easily happen to me. Do you know how that's going to mess up human relationships? And you know what? I preached on this a couple of years ago at our church. Too early. Okay, nobody seemed to know what I was talking about. But when I explained the situation and that, half of all the chatbots out there are sexualized now, the women looked horrified as I shared that information, and the men looked ashamed. Now, this is happening in real time. This is already happening, right? Number one use, companionship and therapy. AI cannot provide what humans need: genuine connection, community, transcendence. It can simulate it, but it can't provide it. So here's the good news for you as a church leader. The church offers what AI never can: real relationships, human to human, like eyeballs over coffee, heart to heart, right? Hand on shoulder, relationships, real hope, real transformation. And it's raw and it's kind of messy. And sometimes it doesn't go well and you have a rupture in the relationship and you need to repair. Hey, that's how God designed us, right? And AI isn't going to quite be like that. So, what is like AI relationships like? It's like eating a diet of ultra high processed foods, right? You're eating Pringles and burritos. It's going to fill you up. It's also going to make you sick. You're probably going to get obese. You're going to get diabetes. It's not going to be good for you. Like social media, it's like connection, but not the kind of connection you need. And what have we seen? We've seen a loneliness epidemic because people have thousands, millions of people around them, and they're all alone. So social media was the gateway drug. This, I think, is going to take it to the next level. So now, back to the original report out of the UK. And this is the hope for the church, okay? You got to read that UK report. It's amazing, called The Quiet Revival. But churchgoers in the UK are reporting significantly higher life satisfaction than non-churchgoers. Do you know 75% of churchgoers say life feels meaningful versus 49% of non-churchgoers? Get this, okay? 68% of male 18 to 34-year-old churchgoers say they feel close to people in their local area. 68% of 18 to 34-year-old men say that they feel close to people in their community, compared to 27% of non-churchgoers their age. So if you don't go to church, you're alone. If you go to church, almost 70% are like, yeah, I feel connected. In other words, a sense of closeness to other people doubles when a young adult attends and gets involved in a local church. Young church-going women, 21-point difference in mental health outcomes when they go to church. So, what's your opportunity? The mental health crisis should drive people to church, not away from it. You have got the antidote to social media loneliness, AI chatbot sexualized companionship loneliness. We've got it. We're the church. So start talking about this. Highlight your community groups. Prioritize connection, not just content. We started talking about this years ago on this podcast and on my channels, right? There was a time where content was scarce. And we're like, got to get the content out. Well, content's everywhere now. What you need is community and connection, okay? That's what you should be focusing on. Nobody should be able to out-community the local church. I don't care whether that's 20 people or 20,000 people. You've got to build community. Community connection, the data is showing, is literally healing people. Why is it doing that? Because that's how God created us. Your church isn't just growing. It's literally saving lives. Now, you want to partner with real-life mental health professionals. You're part of the solution. Am I saying AI therapy is terrible? No, I'm just saying it's incomplete. It's not. It's like ultra-high processed foods. It's going to fill you up for about 20 minutes, and that's probably going to make you a little bit sick. Same with AI, chatbots, and companionship. Do I use AI? Yeah, I use it all the time. Do I have an AI chatbot? No, I don't. I'm not an avatar that I've created or anything like that. I don't want to go down that road. I think it's a slippery slope. But hey, you guys, you're the alternative. So that's the update on church trends. So what does this mean for you? Well, the big picture, the tide's turning. Revival is outpacing retreat. So we got UK data and some American data, but it's showing what's possible everywhere. I think this is a canary in the coal mine. This is what's happening. This is on trend. I think the next 5 years could be the most significant church growth period in decades. And I'm so thrilled to talk about that after years of telling myself, this is not going well, right? It's great to get data like this. So here's the bottom line. The mental health crisis, cultural openness, and generational hunger equals unprecedented opportunity for the church. So for the first time in decades, the wind's at our back. Gen Z is not walking away, they're walking in. The question isn't whether revival is coming, it's whether you're ready for it. So this is your moment, right? Let's not waste it. Let's pray about it. Let's be humble. Let's stay grounded. I'm going to keep you updated as things change. And of course, in January, we'll do 2026 church trends. They'll be out as usual. You can subscribe at careynieuwhof.com to my email list. You'll get everything. Subscribe to the podcast, obviously. So you might have other perspectives, other questions, your own insights, or maybe you're just curious about what other leaders are thinking about the data. The best place to go deeper is inside my Art of Leadership Academy. You can now join it absolutely free to discuss this episode. Yeah, you can do it on YouTube, but why not get in there with just other church leaders, troll-free? They're doing the same thing you are. Bring your whole team. It's free. If you don't have an account, it's free. Just click the link in the description of this episode or visit theartofleadershipacademy.com. You're part of an audience. Now become part of a community. I look forward to seeing you inside. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, because man, it's great to get news like this. Hope our time together today has helped you identify and break a growth barrier you're facing.